Chancellor and Principal to start off this evening's events. Prof. Francis Peterson is a visionary leader in the educational space in South Africa, and he is now our VC and Principal. For those of you that do not know, for 10 days. So it's wonderful to have him around. Before this, he was in other esteemed positions as a VC and Principal of the University of the Free State, as well as Deputy VC at the University of Cape Town. He holds a PhD in Engineering from Stellenbosch University, and he's also a Fellow of the South African Academy of Engineering. His international speaking engagements takes him to many places where he talks about the global discourse on higher education and research, and keep that in our minds. And currently he's also the chairperson of the Board of Directors of University South Africa. With that, Prof. Peterson, welcome.
Thank you very much, Bijl, and good evening to all of you. It's good to see so many people here in the auditorium. I would like to extend, first of all, a special word of welcome to Mr. Solomon's in-laws, Les and Helen Levine, as well as his wife, Lisa Solomon, who are joining us here tonight. So good evening to you and hearty welcome. Now, as Bijl said 10 days ago, I started with this position as Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, and I'm honored of being part of a tradition that is now in its 61st year, the annual Hendrick van der Bijl Memorial Lecture. So every engineer worth her salt or his salt in South Africa is surely aware of the contribution of this extraordinary electronics engineer, the physicist and leader made to the development of the country's industrial landscape during the period 1920 to in the 1930s. It was Hendrick Johannes van der Bijl who identified the three key components needed to stimulate the growth of the South African industry, and the focus has been on cheap electric power, and we still have a discussion around that up until today, cheap steel, and financial and technical assistance to emerging industries. Not content with seeing what needed to be done, Dr. van der Bijl set about doing it. So it was not only about talking about it, he in fact said and put a lot of effort in to make sure that it's been done. He was a driving force behind the establishment of the South African National Electricity Utility, Eskom, and I wonder what he would have said about the unbundling of Eskom in the three units as we are implementing it as today. Its steelmaker ISCO and its development finance institution, the IDC, Industrial Development Corporation. So after World War II broke out, Dr. van der Bijl was put in charge of the South African's war supplies and later general supplies. In 1947, a year before his passing, he established the passenger liner company, Safmarine. It would probably be only a slight exaggeration to say that Hendrick van der Bijl single-handedly laid the foundations for the development of the South African industry. If you can just see what he has done, and also the catalyst that was provided through him to be able to develop not only an industrial complex, but also new types of industry that build on the foundations of those industries. Because we often forget about the input industries that accompany these sort of basic industries. And there's a lot of smaller companies, small and medium enterprises that started on the back of these industries. In the process, he showed what an incredible impact engineering could have on a country's economy, setting an example of every South African trained engineer, including myself, as a chemical engineer and as an extractive metallurgist. So this remarkable legacy is why the Hendrick van der Bijl Memorial Lecture has been held each year since 1963 as a collaboration between the faculties of Engineering, Built Environment, Information Technology here at the University of Pretoria and the South African Academy of Engineering. And in fact, we should pay tribute to the faculty, but also the Academy, for pursuing that on an annual basis and make sure that we don't forget about the wonderful work that has been done, but also the different speakers over these years that have inspired us as not only professionals in the profession, the industrialists, but also the members of the Academy to do more and to make sure that we develop and train the next generation of engineers and engineering thinkers that can do and mimic what Hendrick van der Bijl has done during this period. And I think the important thing now, when we just was talking briefly about engineering and how the shape and understanding of engineering have expanded so much. We typically would look at the classical way of engineering, but that have evolved over time. And now we talk about how engineering can partner and integrate with other disciplines in our system of innovation. There doesn't actually have to be engineering. And by doing that, you start to catalyze innovations within engineering, because it's now cross-fertilization that take place from other disciplines outside of engineering. So as you may know, the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and Information Technology here at the university contributes 28% of graduate engineers in the country, with our mineral and mining engineering ranked 36 in the world. And I will obviously over time I may not talk to the mining and minerals engineering department in the faculty. Each year, we invite a leading personality to deliver the memorial lecture under the general theme of the role of engineering in society. And the list of speakers over the years reads like a who's who of business and industry. And occasionally, academia or government also participate as a speaker in this event. And in 2012, we had Trevor Manuel. He was then the Minister in the Presidency for National Planning. And he urged engineers to plan for the scale of change that could eliminate poverty and unemployment by 2030 in our National Development Plan. Other change makers who have delivered the Hendrick van der Bijl Memorial Lecture in recent years include Natasha Viljoen. She's the former Chief Executive Officer of Anglo-American Platinum, and she's now Chief Operating Officer of the largest gold mining company in the world. And she was also, in 2022, she presented this lecture and was the first woman to deliver the lecture. This year, we have the privilege of hosting Greg Solomon, Chief Executive Officer of McDonald South Africa and a trained civil engineer. Now he's a very good example of migration of a civil engineer into another industry and the impact that he has made, which I will describe just now. So in the 12 years that Greg has headed up McDonald's in South Africa, he has expanded the business threefold, resulting in many new jobs opportunities. The business is now approaching 400 restaurants and about 15,000 employees. So Greg has won a host of awards for his business achievements, including the Institute of People's Management's CEO of the Year for 2011. He was also CEO of the Year at Standard Bank's Rising Star Awards in 2018 and the ABSA Business Award at the Jury's Achiever Awards in 2019. And he currently judges the ABSA Business Awards in the large business category. Greg is not in for the accolades. At heart, he's a humanitarian who puts people at the center of the business. And I often remind myself of sort of a classical metallurgist. He was the Chief Executive Officer of Anglo-American PLC, Mark Mutafani. And Mark always have said that, you know, when you look at the business, your shareholder owns the business. Your stakeholders in different companies, you've got many stakeholders. They are partners in the business. Your people are the business. And I think that's probably also the approach that you're taking, Greg. So yes, as an engineer and business leader, you understand the importance of technology, of digitalization, modernization, the fourth industrial revolution, and brand purpose. But he's adamant that people and culture are what take organizations and communities forward. The role that McDonald South Africa includes, or his role at McDonald South Africa includes chairing the transformation and the sustainability subcommittee of the board, and is making a huge impact in terms of diversity, in terms of equity and inclusivity. I have it on good authority, Greg, that the new Sammy Marks McDonald's in Pretoria City Centre is running entirely by women. The architect who designed it was also a woman. And I don't know whether she comes from University of Pretoria, but we will discuss that later. So beyond his corporate role, Greg has a strong commitment to education. He's a board member of the Spark Schools and chairs its Finance and Risk Committee. Greg is also a board member of the Ronald McDonald's House Charities for sick or injured children and young people, and a committee member at Great Park Synagogue. In addition, he spends a considerable amount of time mentoring young entrepreneurs and staff members. Personally and professionally, Greg Solomon is making many good things happen. However, there is something that's troubling him at the moment. He indicated we have a leadership problem. And this is his topic for this year's Hendrick van der Bijl's Memorial Lecture. And Greg, I'm looking forward to your presentation, and let's put all our hands together to welcome you.
Thank you, Doc, for that very, very warm welcome. He's already presented a few slides of mine on the Sammy Marks. It's wonderful to be here. It's a huge honor when you look at the people that spoke before. And when the professor asked me, should I address you guys, I said, well, what do you want? Because they call me the hamburger dude now. I'm the hamburger guy. And I'm thinking, no, I've got to go back many, many years to go back into the engineering conversation. But to be quite honest, almost 27 years ago, I was a road engineer and a building material engineer with Savage and Lovemore. And a newspaper article in 1997 came up and said McDonald's is coming to town. And I was working on the Villiers Road, laying curbstones and putting crusher run and base course down on roads. And I'm married for 30 years, that's why my family's here today. And my wife picked up the newspaper and she said, well, isn't it cool, McDonald's is coming to town and they're looking for somebody to build their restaurants. And at that point in time, it was a fundamental point. I mean, we'll talk about decisions and we'll talk about things and choices that we have to make. And unfortunately, young engineers make these choices. And like myself, we lose a lot of young engineers to engineering. But they become huge assets to our economy for the reasons of our training. And I practiced that engineering, became a project manager at McDonald's. After about 75, 80 McDonald's restaurants, I decided that's enough. We can sort of build it. Many people asked me, Greg, you're a hamburger company or you're a real estate company? Very, very quickly we realized, we buy a lot of our properties. We build one of our largest departments, our architectural and engineering departments, and building departments and plan approval departments. It's all in-house. And then moved into operations, and I guess the rest is history. So my topic for tonight is about leadership. It's not about engineering. But as engineers, we are leaders. I don't believe we have a Ramaphosa problem. We don't have a Biden problem. We don't have a Trump problem. We don't have a leader problem. We have a leadership problem. And the first thing we need to ask ourselves is every day and every morning we wake up and we see ourselves in the mirror. And in leadership and management, we talk about 3 different types of leadings. Are you leading self? Are you leading others? And are you leading businesses? And I'm spending a lot of my time now on leading self and what we're doing for changing the world. Because innovation is often about new things, but innovation is often about doing the same thing differently. And that starts with us. Well, look, we talk about Madiba very, very openly, and many people put pictures of Madiba on the screen. But I want to talk about different styles of leaders and different styles of leadership. We get a dictating style. For engineers, we get known as a little bit more as introverts, and we get a more subtle style, a more passive-aggressive style. But for me, not to be cliched, Madiba has an influential style. When you lead with an influential type of leaders, we got to talk through things. We got to know when's right to be able to dictate. We got to know when's right to be able to sit back and lead from behind. But because we're engineers, I want to play some mathematics with you, and to illustrate this very, very important point, I want you to think of somebody in your mind. And I don't want you to tell anyone who that is, especially if it's the person sitting next to you. And I want you to rate that person for me. If 10 is absolutely outstanding and terrible is 0, I want you to rate that person for me out of 10 on how much you trust that person. Okay, got your number. And for the same person, I want you to rate that person now on how much you respect them. Trust and respect. You got your 2 numbers? I got 8 and 8. You might have 5 and 10. I want you to multiply them together. 8 and 8, 64. 10 and 10, 100. If that person didn't score more than 75%, then that person is not influential in your life. Now, you build trust by delivering on your promise, and you build respect by teaching somebody something new today. Weirdly enough, we haven't got time for me to tell you the story that engineering has taught me these very systematic things. But to wake up every day and think of that formula, which is not really the moral of the story. The moral of the story is not what you would rate people. The moral of the story is what would people rate you. And so let's wake up every single night and every single morning, and we build trust by delivering on these promises. And these are small promises that we should make, not big promises, not these massive projects that we have to finish in 2 years. These are the micro projects that we see on our timelines. We deliver and we hit those promises and we hit those commitments. And that's why engineers are so good, because we understand project management and we understand timelines. All right, and we deliver on respect by teaching somebody new today. Another wonderful trait of our profession on how we do and how we work, and how structural engineers hand over to civil engineers, civils to structurals, and then mechanicals and electricals, and how there's a huge amount of trust, which I want to talk about in a few minutes' time as well. So when I evaluate, I just want to turn it a little bit like that so I can see, when I evaluate my world right now, your world may look different. I mean, I'm selling hamburgers to 8.5, 9 million customers every single month. This is what my cloud map looks like. It's quite heavily on rising costs. It's a supply chain disruption at the ports. It's about water and it's about power, and it's about unemployment, and it's about getting government to approve building plans and giving me business plan permissions. It's pretty much about engineering. This is my mind map of problems, and which I need solved in the world. And yes, we don't want to necessarily see weather reports, but we want to try and understand what is actually happening in our world as we continue to challenge the next level of progress, certainly for our business. But if I take us back just a few years, when we had load shedding, riots, and COVID, and the size of the text At the time, if I had to plot this graph 3 years ago, the size of the text without the blue, I suppose, would tell a different story. But we didn't really know how big COVID was until it really hit us. And for some of us, it hit us hard. For McDonald's, it hit us really hard. We closed all our restaurants. We were 350 odd restaurants. We closed them down for 3 months. I think if we weren't able to canvass government to open up the restaurants, and if it wasn't our ability as a drive-through infrastructure where we could at least get cars through our drive-through, I don't think the big McDonald's would have lasted more than 3 or 4 months. And I think we would have collapsed. That's how severe it was. We were running this business from our home. We had this war room. I had 15,000 people that we had laid off, not laid off, but put at home. We kept them on the payroll, and there's an interesting story around that. By the way, I was remiss to say when I started talking, I'm only going to talk for about 20 minutes. I know that it's supposed to be a lecture, and I know as engineers we like to get lectured too. But I'm only going to speak for half of my time, so I really encourage you to think about questions. I'll take any questions. Any questions around scaling, any questions about digitizing, any questions about human capital, any questions about engineering if you want to, any questions about the food. That's my job. That's what I have to do right now. So I thought COVID was bad until load shedding hit. And load shedding made COVID look like a Mickey Mouse. Because for us, without power in our businesses, we were literally down and under. 350 kVA of power does a McDonald's generate because we're cooking our food all the time in an industrial kitchen, and we're cooking that food at a high process time. In McDonald's, we say 1 step, 1 second. So when you look at our little kitchen that produces a 15 Rand hamburger, and you're looking at a 10 million Rand investment to put into a kitchen to produce just that, you've got to understand the process engineering, and this is sort of what got me up, and the amount of time that we have to do to cook your hamburger in 1.5 minutes, and what type of equipment needs to cook it at 211 degrees Celsius when you're taking a French fries that's coming out at minus 20 of a freezer, and you're cooking it at 167 for 3 minutes, 10 seconds. So you can understand there's a science over here of what we had to do and what attracted me to this business as an engineer who thinks systematically. But needless to say, load shedding nearly killed us. And so all our capex went into these 315 kVA generators. And we bought, you can imagine the number, but we bought, we were 350, we bought 311 315 kVA generators. But we had already sort of started to think through this. And by the time that load shedding got in, we were already 2 years ahead of the curve. And it was a wonderful period. Not great for capex, not great for investment, but great for us because when load shedding came, the lights were up and people could come to McDonald's for eating. And then load shedding's disappeared now. And my resources and influences are telling me that we're probably not going to see it for the foreseeable future. That's if we continue to privatize with new types of energy, we're probably not going to be there. So now we're re-engineering these generators to be able, we're still putting solar on the McDonald's buildings, but now we're using the combination of solar and generators to bring down the peak. So if we bring down the peak, it's 30% saving of our electricity bill. So we can get into the more 100, 120 kVA consumption levels. So load shedding was significantly bigger until we hit the riots in KwaZulu-Natal. And the riots in KwaZulu-Natal came, and we pretty much shut down 100 McDonald's down, and 14 McDonald's were burnt to the ground. So you can just imagine managing through the crisis management of that. And once again, it's just been one issue after each other. But we've come out well, we've come out fighting. But this is the landscape of my world. It's not very engineering, but it has engineering talk in it. So what did COVID, so I want to send you like 6 or 7 messages in the next 20 minutes. So what did COVID really teach us? It sort of said to me, we had 3 different phases of COVID. The first was obviously the infection, the second was sort of getting right, and the third was coming out of the COVID world. And for me, what it said to me and what we learned very quickly is that what was going to happen in 2020 happened, 2030 happened in 2020. It was the pace and the rapid change of what we had predicted the world to be. So I do believe in good business. Certainly for us, we have something called a 10-3-1-Q, a 10-year vision, a 3-year plan, a one-year action plan, and a quarterly review. But I just ask ourselves, how many of us in our businesses are looking out 10 years? Engineers like to look out 10 years. You know, for us, again, no insult on the finance guys. You know, we got many, we look at an income statement and a P&L on a monthly basis, but engineers got to plan long-term drainage solutions, long-term road solutions. So we understand we can try and envision these 10-year game plans. And so thank goodness from a McDonald's perspective, we were really looking out 3-4 years. We had really had delivery in our market. We had really started a digitization. We had really started the transformational journey of where we wanted to be, all right? Not because of COVID. So when COVID came for us, we were down like in 3 months. Within 4 or 5 months, we were back up to volume. But for other companies that weren't able to forecast what was happening in 2030, really struggled. For many of us now today, we can sit on Teams calls and Zoom calls, it was nothing. But in 2019, there was no team calls and Zoom calls. That's how quick it happened. We're in 2024 already, and we have virtual calls more than face-to-face meetings. Or when we do site inspections now at McDonald's, you don't need to go to site inspection. You've got this big rig that we put up. It's digitally looking at everything in the restaurant. The project manager can just dial in on his phone and at any point in time do a site inspection of what's happening in the business. Just change the world. And so a concern for me as well, from a leadership perspective, is we've got these young leaders that are coming in and trying to transform. We've got the older leaders like myself and trying to say, I can't quite get it, and we can't move quick enough. Because ladies and gentlemen, here's the issue. When the external environment is changing faster than your own internal environment, you become irrelevant. And that's how change happens, and that's how change takes over. So it's not about being at university. It's great for us to be here tonight, that we all continue, no matter what age and time frame we are in our careers, we continue to evolve and we continue to change and learn. And we have to blend the wisdom of the senior leaders and the youthful transformational change of these young leaders. Otherwise, we will change, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a while. This is Sandton, the richest mile in Johannesburg. Changing a little focus, changing a little bit of the messages that I'm sending to you. This is Alex, 2.5 kilometers away from Sandton. We have 3 McDonald's restaurants in Sandton, and we have 4 McDonald's restaurants in Alex and the surrounds. We need to understand this country that we live in. It's a candy-coated apple. The Gini coefficient of this country is one of the worst in the world. We have the haves, and we have the have-nots. And as leaders, if we're going to continue to build the world, build this country, if we're going to build the Santons, we're just scratching the surface of what the potential of this country is. But if we're going to focus our attention on the Alexes, because this is where the bulk of the change and transformation needs to happen, this is the engineering and the business challenge that we all need to take ourselves. This is Stellenbosch. Beautiful type in Stellenbosch. We've got 2-3 restaurants in Stellenbosch, and these are the rusty roads of the Cape Flats. We've got 10 restaurants in this area. So you can understand from a business perspective, not necessarily from an engineering, but if you want scalability and if you want to be able to have a sustainable business, you need to be fishing where the fish are. And we need to understand where the opportunity of this country is. It sits here. This is where the change needs to happen. Because if businesses are focusing here, well, I suppose if you're a wine farmer, maybe this is where you want to be. But the opportunities are limited because the opportunities are great for us over here. So we stand at a crossroads. I call it like every 7 years. And I feel like we're moving into a really good time now. I think Q4, I can start to feel the change. I think we're going to have a good Q1 into next year. I can feel the momentum, and often I can feel it in purchasing power. I mean, youth unemployment is 32%. Or unemployment is 32. Youth unemployment is like over 45%, which means 45% of young people under the age of 30 do not have work. I mean, for what that means for me is our average age in McDonald's is 27. So I'm employing these young kids. And many of them are engineers that can't get jobs, so they come and make hamburgers until they can work enough to be able to find another job. But that's sort of not the story about these choices over here. Choices is like a little millie planting. You sometimes plant that millie seed and you harvest it in 3 years' time. So you don't make choices and get an immediate gratification. And as leaders, sometimes the choices that we make are not for us to harvest. They're for the younger generation, the people that step in our shoes. Left or right, we're going to go forward. What decisions are we going to make for our businesses? What decisions are we going to make for the young leaders that are following for us? And what decisions are we going to make to transform this country to a better country, to a country of more equal opportunity, to a country where we can have a GDP per capita north of $10,000. I was in the Nordics last week, and we were talking about comparing business strategies. We were talking to the CEO there, $72,000 GDP per capita, compared to a country like South Africa at 7,500 GDP per capita, a completely different game. But my message on choices is that choices are some of the most important things. And how we make decisions as engineers is very thought through. Sometimes we make decisions that are just too quick, decisions that haven't been thought through enough. You see, ladies and gentlemen, good choices will praise us forever. They will praise our children and the next generation. And bad choices will haunt us. So choose wisely, think carefully, and if we're unsure about what we should do, I always say, let me sleep on it, let me have one more sleep, let me have 2 more sleeps. We don't want to be procrastinators, but we want to make very, very carefully, well thought out, precise, well calculated spreadsheet engineering choices. So let me tell you, I've got to turn a little bit more here because I can't see this. So let me tell you a little bit about McDonald's. We started in 1995. I joined McDonald's as a young engineer in 1996, 1997. We brought drive-through to this country. For many of us, I'm trying to look at the faces, many of us were around in 1996. There's 1 or 2 over here that were babies at 1996. We opened up the first restaurant in Blackheath, McDonald's, the second restaurant in Western Cape in Tiger Manor. But now drive-through is part of our culture. You get certain businesses and certain brands that innovate with newness, and you get certain businesses and certain brands that are fast followers. There's no right or wrong answer. You just got to be the best at your knitting. And then we introduced breakfast into McDonald's. And at that point in time, if I had to ask us all over here, without knowing anything about McDonald's, we're a hamburger business, and we want to bring breakfast to this country. What should we do? And if we put a little innovation hub together, we'll probably say 2 fried eggs, a rasher of bacon, and some toast. Well, it's not going to be really cool to eat that if you focus on drive-through and how you're going to eat 2 fried eggs and some bacon in a car. So we came up with a concept of an Egg McMuffin. It's 13% of our total business, the Egg McMuffin now, all right, in our organization. The Big Mac is still the hero at 35-40% of our business. But now we've got a drive-through, we've got a mobility, and then we brought 24/7. It's a very interesting story, 24/7. I was the director of operations at that point in time. And we decided, should we go 24/7 and not? And I remember the late Ishmael Moloko and Peter Moyanga. Peter Moyanga is our franchisee in Springs. They came to me and said to me, let's go 24/7. We just came out of Chicago. I said, 24/7? I mean, I was much younger then. I said, who's around on a Friday night at 1 o'clock in the morning? What should we go 24/7? This is Africa. This is South Africa. We're not going to do it. So again, just like McDonald's, we do a lot of consultations. We speak a lot to our people. And so we called a big town hall meeting like this of about 200 people, and mostly our crew, young 25-year-olds. At that point in time, we weren't as diverse, so we were about 30% women in our organization. And our own people said to us, let's go 24/7. And it wasn't from a business perspective, it was from a logistics and a human perspective. A young lady said to us, Greg, this is how it's going to work. We close this restaurant at 11 o'clock in the evening. By the time I've cleaned it, it's midnight. By the time the taxi comes and fetches me at midnight, I've got to take a 1 hour drive back into there. And I've got to walk that last kilometre at 1 o'clock in the morning at home. Why don't you bring the night shift in at 9:30? Let them work a night shift in the business, so I can go home at 9 o'clock and get a decent shift, and the night shift can stay at home. So it was a people decision. If you really understand it, the business is much more holistic than just a sales and revenue item as well. Won a couple of awards when it came to, in 2010 around best company to work for 3 years in a row, and then in 2013 we decided to go light steel frame buildings because we needed to build these things much quicker. We were building out of masonry, we were building out of concrete, big concrete foundations and raft foundations. We need to get these things up quicker. So the challenge to the team was, how do you knock up a McDonald's quick, like in 30 days? At that time, the record was like 90 to 120 days, because you're building 30 of these every single year. Our pace at 400 odd restaurants is about 30 a year. But I don't think we have the engineering, and we don't have the general contractors right now to be able to master that. So we've got about 15 buildings that are light steel frame buildings, boarded on either sides. Up goes the roof, like literally within 15 days we had the roof up. Once the roof is up, then the wet work is all done, then you can start getting out, and we're sort of building McDonald's restaurants in 60 days. But it just gave maintenance issues. We moved away from that. We crossed over 8 million customers in 2014. And then already we were starting in 2015 and 2016, we were already starting around energy conservation, in LED lighting, in low voltage and water conservation. We were already thinking out there, because our business needed to be out there, because that was a responsible business. We already started our own delivery, Mac Delivery, in 2016, because delivery saved us during COVID. So it sort of ties back into the story of when COVID came, and if your business is thinking 5, 6, 7 years out of what happened in the business, we're able to recover, we'll be able to respond. Many businesses, in a humble way, not in an arrogant way, were never able to respond, because they were just so stuck in doing it the old way. I said to you already that innovation is not about doing things new. I often said to you that innovation is about doing the same thing differently, but it's also about how do you innovate. And especially for engineers and for architects and process engineers, innovation is our life. So for us, we changed the model of innovation culture around about that time, where it was up to the exco to come up with all these great ideas of innovation. We changed it around, and we said we want a culture of innovation. We want innovative ideas to be praised and to be rewarded. And so we said to 10,000 people, you can give us your innovation awards, recommendations. And here is a line called innovation.co.za. Write to us and give us. Now, it was very easy for me as a leader to innovate. I didn't have to think of what the innovation was. I just had to choose what the best innovation was, and I had to choose from 10,000 ideas. So innovation needs to continue to happen in the business, but often is the case is that we found that innovation is best in the business. Uber, flagship restaurants, I'll talk about Sammy Marks, and then we built a hamburger university about 4 or 5 years ago in 2019, just before that. It sits in Sandton. It's a 1,800 square meter school, and we train our own people, because I'm sitting at a tertiary education now, and it's incredible of what we do. But business needs to understand that education needs to continue, and we need to continue the learning, and we need to continue, because it's either the university or the university of life. Many people in McDonald's don't have the privilege of the degrees that we have. Many people at McDonald's just had a matric, and now they're senior leadership and even exco. Colin Messina started off in McDonald's 25 years ago, sweeping the floor with a matric. He came into McDonald's serving hamburgers on front counter, walked up his way in from a business into business management, did his MBA, and he's now a senior operations manager in the Eastern Cape, running 25, 30 restaurants. So yes, it's important, and I'm certainly not undermining it, and I tell my children we all have to get an education, but it's the responsibility of big business to continue the educational journey, because that we haven't even thought of what's needed in the world right now in universities, what's happening in real life. And so now we've got 15,000 restaurants, and we've now almost moved into a world where the world is all about the telephone, the cell phone, and the digital. For those that picked up a little pamphlet outside, if you scan that, that's our app. We started that app, let's see how quick this evolution moves. We launched that app literally, it's been playing around for the last 2 years, but we launched it really about 9 months ago. We got 650,000 active users on the app just from 9 months ago. This is how people want to communicate. This is how customers want to communicate with us. So instead of walking up to front counter, you're placing the orders. But by the way, there's no sales pitch over here. If you do download this, there's something free on me on your first order. So the doc spoke about Sammy Mark's McDonald's. This is the one that I've chosen. We've got a few flagship restaurants like this. This is in downtown Tshwane. And at that point in time, talking about transformation, I'm not just going to talk about it, I'll work at it. We're going to, and transformation not only in innovation, but transformation in who we are. Because if you're not indicative inside your business of the customers that you serve outside your business, then you're not relevant. And so we wanted to make a statement with this building, but we also wanted to make a statement, all right, about how we built this building. So yes, you're quite right that the architect, I'm not quite sure where she comes from, but I think she's from Free State. All right, she's one of our architects. We've got 3 architects designed this building. The project manager is a female. She built this building. The civil engineer who was signed off on the drawings was a female. The restaurant manager of the Sammy Mark's building is a female. The operations manager of Sammy Mark's restaurant is a lady. And the director of operations, Maureen Williams, is a lady. So we can understand right now we've worked hard at this transformation. 60% of McDonald's employees out of the 15,000 are women. All right, and we're approaching 50% of the top 20% of our senior leadership in McDonald's is women. So this is not by just, you've got to work it, but also at that point in time, you've got to realize that, and I speak to my chief people officer, Yvonne Temler, and I say, because we're now at 60, I said, Yvonne, so what's the plan for next year? She says, the plan is 65% women. I said, no, that's now pushing it too far. Let's bring it back to 50-50. And that's where we want to be. But we've moved away from the conversation that we need to open doors for women. Women are thriving in McDonald's because they are the best for the job. And when we can get to that point of view, whether they're engineers, whether they're operations managers, whether it's Tozana in finance, these are leaders in the organization, because you need to create that environment, all right, where equality has become part of your culture. So 4 or 5 more messages that I want to send to you around leadership. And I've chosen 3 or 4 things that my background as an engineer has allowed me to think through this. And this is not a message about the chess player. This is a message about what if. This is a message about contingency plans. Now, like car insurance and like health insurance, it's an investment that we don't want to make, but it's often an investment that we have to make. But as engineers, we run scenarios after scenarios after scenarios, a high scenario, a low scenario. And so we brought in this philosophy of contingency planning to a point where our business and consumer insights guys plan different scenarios. Because what gives you nimbleness as a leader to make decisions is when you've got a reserve in the pocket. Where you're going with plan A, but plan B is damn good as well. Because you can't be 100% sure that plan A is going to work. And so this is very important for us to spend a lot of time and a lot of money going with 2 plans and only executing 1 plan. And again, it's that sort of analytical mindset. It's trying to go through making those decisions and those choices. And it's not necessarily me alone. Interestingly enough, my chief operating officer, Mlu Matonsi, is an engineer as well. So again, we're not trying to steal engineers to run businesses, but it's how we think is different. All right, we think very project management, we think process, we think start, finish, budget. And it works in business. And we've put these contingency plans in place. There's a lot of things that we've done in McDonald's that have worked, but there's 10 times more things we've done in McDonald's that have failed. So you've got to fail, not as an engineer. You can't fail as an engineer, but you've got to fail to win sometimes. It's just how quick you can pivot and how quick you can change so the customer doesn't know that there was a failure. Contingency plan is crucial for me. I used to talk about 18 months ago about something called the power of 10. We've spoken a lot about innovation. I think I've made my point. But I want to, and to the MBA groups that I speak to, I talk a lot about this in detail, but I'll just leave you with a high-level thought. I have a philosophy in life that every time something changes by the power of 10, something fundamentally needs to change in your leadership style or in your business or in your organization. Or if I can be provocative, even in our engineering methodologies. 1 million EBITDA, 10 million EBITDA. Serving 10 customers, serving 100 customers. having 10 restaurants, having 100 restaurants. You cannot run an organization that runs 10 restaurants the same way as it runs 100 restaurants. It fundamentally needs to change, and it starts with leaders that need to make that change. And if leaders can't make that change and evolve, then they need to step aside for new leaders to take over. And I would imagine the same thing with engineering principles. But the world's become so quick, the world's become so dynamic, that I've seen organizations, I've seen businesses, I've seen principles of how things change. And let me go back 1 or 2 slides here. And I don't want to get too far. This is a glass building, it's a freestanding building, there's no engineering feat to the big structural engineers over here. But if you peek through the glass, for those that have never been through a McDonald's, you'll see a little computer screen, it's called the self-ordering kiosk. You walk up, we introduced that 24 months ago into McDonald's. We scaled 400 restaurants within 12 months, every single, I would say 80% of the restaurants have got a self-ordering kiosk. Got a lot of questions from the Labour Department to say, are we doing away with labour by being able to do that? Because McDonald's doesn't have servers. You don't sit down in a table server. You used to walk up to a front counter, place your orders and go and sit down yourself. But we just redirected the skill set of having the person on that screen creating a hospitality environment. But it's 24 months since we've scaled it, and I believe within the next 24 months that technology will be obsolete. It's all going to be sitting on the cell phone. It's already sitting on the cell phone, and for those, again, it's not a sales pitch, but just for wondering, understand how quick it's moving. For those who download the app, our next rendition in the next 30 days, the upload on the app will change that self-ordering kiosk exists on the phone. And so it's moving so quick, and the pace is so huge that you've got to have these plans in place. So we talk about, and in the introduction I know that yes, engineering and spreadsheets and mathematics, but for us it is a big business, it's a people business now. And while some of my bedrocks have been engineering principles and process principles, when you have an organization of 15,000 people, more than anything else, it's your values that knit you together. And it's not about finding 15,000 Gregs. On the contrary, it's about, especially in my top 10 exco, it's about finding 9 people that are completely opposite to me. Because our power is in our differences. And our values are just 1 or 2 things that knit us together. Our power is in our diversity. I made that point to you before. If you are not indicative of the customer profile that you serve, you won't be able to scale your organization. And so you need to find these magic little touch points, these 4 or 5 things in your organization that knit you together. I call it the silver lining that pulls us together. Serve, inclusion, integrity, community, and family. And family, very, very big for us. On a Friday afternoon at head office, you'll see kids and grandchildren running around. It's quite important for us because we sell Happy Meals at the end of the day. And we must be smiling and we must be happy, and that's who we are. We're playful in the business. So we've talked about contingencies, we've talked about big plans, and we've talked about lots of things and changes in our lives. But at the end of the day, it's often about focus. Another really cool thing that engineering's taught us. Because when the chips are down and you really need to pull something through, you can't be having a 25-page strategy of being able to talk to 15,000 people. When the chips are down, you've got to go to one thing. In McDonald's, it's called Q, S, C, and V. Now, do we get it right every single time? No. But if you had to go tonight to any of the Pretoria restaurants or the Sammy Mark restaurant and ask for the restaurant manager and say to the restaurant manager, you don't have to say Greg said, can you explain to me what Q, S, C, and V is? They'll say to you, it's the principles that found us of quality, service, cleanliness, and value. Now again, do we get it right every single time? No, we're far from getting it right. But when the chips are down, you've got to deliver what was your founding statement in who you are. You've got to be able to pull the silver bullet to be able to punch strong. The question is, what is your focus in your organization, in your business? What is your go-to? And what is the one that's going to pull you through the times of trouble? 2 or 3 more messages. We have in McDonald's called a principle called the 3-legged stool. It fundamentally talks about relationships. The one leg represents the franchisees, the one leg the corporation, and the other leg our suppliers. So once a year we call a big room like this with all our suppliers, our electricians, our builders, our hamburger makers, our chip makers, the bread guys, and we have a strategic, and we show them our strategic plan because they are a key part to the growth of our organization. And in the same time, we talk to our franchisees. The customer sits on the stool. The customer's king. And when the one leg is down on the stool falls down on a three-leg stool. Now this is not about making everybody happy. This is about making everybody equally happy. Now equally happy comes with compromise. It comes with alignment. It comes with hard conversations, frank conversations, factual conversations. But it's making everybody 8 out of 10 happy instead of one person 10 out of 10 and one person 5 out of 10, because that's not going to give equilibrium. So relationships are very, very important with our suppliers, with our franchisees, and with our staff. You know, almost 3.5 years ago, my son is 24. He was 21. And I remember 3.5 years ago, we were having a chat on Friday night, and we had a massive argument. A 21-year-old young man and his father disagreed on a massive principle, a massive culture of our family, a massive value of our family, a massive Ubuntu of our family. Came 11, 12 o'clock, we were screaming and shouting. Thank goodness he didn't box me. But we were both crying as grown men, sobbing. And anyway, cut a long story short, emotional story. A couple of hours later, balance your relationships in who you are. Balance your relationships as your franchisees. And pick up a telephone to my franchisees and say, oh, another customer complaint. By taking time to visit that franchisee and just get to know what that franchisee's concerns are in their local community. Because those are the softer things that allow the much harder conversations. The deeper your relationships, the much more hard, frank, and respectful conversations you can have. And the quicker you can move in an organization when you have slightly deeper relationships. So the last couple of weeks have been fantastic for us, haven't we? So we've celebrated with the poker. These guys are winning champs. This is one of the best Springbok teams that we've ever seen, if not the best. But here we talk about in leadership and certainly different lines, and if you want to bring engineering into the fold over here, we understand that the scrum half is not the wing, and the wing is not the prop, and the hooker is not the lock. Now if the hooker needs to play lock for a little bit, he can play lock for a little bit, but it'll be very limited. And so this is one of the most difficult dynamic issues that we need in a team. But engineers get this right. Because an electrical engineer needs the architect and the civil engineer to be able to design a building before he can move. And so he hands it over to the plumbing engineer, and then ultimately we can go and put it into the process engineer, we can put it out into the planner, and the project manager can get it done. So we understand this level of process, but that comes with holding people accountable and holding people you throw the ball accountable to. And a working team and a winning team, I spend a lot of time studying this and a lot of time. This is my single biggest thing every day, is to make sure that my team works like the Springboks. That my fly half knows that his job's there and the scrum half's going to hold him accountable when he drops the ball. And so this is very, very important as a leader, and when we grow in our organizations, on how we hold our people accountable, how we move the ball across the different disciplines. And what we can't have is we can't have the lock being the wing. When the lock becomes the wing, you've got a disaster on your hands. And then my last 2 points that I want to do, I couldn't stop by putting the pyramids in an engineering school. So you check these pyramids, there's 3 of them there, am I right? 1, 2, 3, they're all different size. But they're all of a similar shape, aren't they? And so before we existed as engineers, where we could build a skinny thing like this that's as high as a tower, these were the engineers that were building the pyramids in Egypt. Now if you wanted to go high, you'd better go wide, because the angle of these pyramids are all the same. I hope I'm not wrong, but I believe that angle is called the angle of repose. And if you throw some sand on the ground, it's about 47 degrees, depending on what materials you throw on the ground, am I right? But obviously the Egyptians got it right. Not so much for you guys, but I thought it's a cool story to tell to a bunch of engineers, but certainly to my leaders that I tell the story to, is that although you qualify as an engineer and you move through, there's only one way that you can get up. And to the young leaders that say, Greg, we want to be you one day. I said, don't worry about the pyramid height. Continue to build your base. Continue, come out of school, that's one block. Go to university in engineering, that's another block. I talk to people, let's think about the next 5 years, get that one under your thing, and never stop learning. Never stop learning. No matter whether you're 86 or whether you're 26. Continue to learn. And the more you learn, the more you build. I call it the 3 E's. Exposure, experience, and education. You grow your base. You can then one day, to my youngsters, I tell them you can one day take over my job. So 10 years ago, and my last point to you is we've been speaking about a lot of cool things, but 10 years ago, I decided that we're not going to have bonuses. We had 172 odd restaurants 10 years ago. I said no bonuses for restaurant managers. If you hit these 4 KPIs, profit, sales, a people KPI, and a quality/safety KPI, we set them. You book yourself on this boat with me to Mauritius and back. So there's an interesting, cool thought over here. Not everybody's motivated on money, and not everybody's motivated on bonuses, although those are important in any field. So out of the 170 odd restaurant managers, I believe just over 150 met their KPI, had a good year that year. And so we were on this boat and we were flicking out to Mauritius. I didn't have cell phone signal. I was going crazy. Ordered myself a satellite phone because I didn't want to be disconnected. But again, the story is not necessarily about the boats and the people KPIs. Again, an engineering feat. The story for me is I was sitting at the back of this boat and it was just churning out. I mean, this is like 2-3 rugby fields of boat. It was churning out water. I couldn't believe how big this boat was. And I just asked myself, how does this boat turn? How do you turn this boat? Surely somebody with a steering wheel turns the boat, and I couldn't wait till I get to the other side. Google, how does a boat turn? I'm not a mechanical engineer. I don't know if you're an auto engineer or whatever the story is. And so modern boats just have jet engines on the side. So you push the jet engine, the whole boat shifts to the one side to shift to the other side. But old boats, obviously with a rudder, and inside the rudder is a little rudder. The little yellow rudder inside the blue rudder. It's called the trim tab. T-R-I-M-T-A-B. You see, when you turn the trim tab left, the rudder turns right. And when the rudder turns right, the ship turns left. It's like power steering. It's like the engineering story of power steering. Some engineer came up with this crazy sort of thing. But then the leadership message for me was, we can talk about a lot of things, ladies and gentlemen. If I had to leave big decisions around culture and values and innovation and transformation and how we use process and my background as an engineer that's framed my mind on being a better leader when I look myself in the mirror every single morning and say, can I make a change to someone's life by delivering on trust and respect? It's all, leave that. I leave one message for you. It's the trim tab. It's the little moves every single day that make the biggest difference. It's the thank you. It's the hello. It's the happy birthday. It's the small level of recognition. It's the small bit, the tap on the shoulder when one of your people are down. All right? It's those small moves that ultimately make the biggest change. All right? For you to be able to gain that respect, gain that, and ultimately one day, when I reach that pivot of being able to say, I was able to be able to at least contribute to somebody's life and make a difference. I didn't speak too much about engineering, but it was a great privilege to talk to you tonight, and thank you very much for the honor and the privilege. I know I said we can take some Q&A if there is. I don't know if this audience is as bad as the medical industry, but we've got some questions already. Go for it.
So just a bit of a background. I'm a student, so not necessarily an engineer just yet, but you
Okay.
talk about the whole Samson and Alex thing. How can we as then students start essentially chipping away at such problems like that?
So you can't necessarily as a student, but you can as a leader, because you will one day find yourself in a business and you need to use your youth and your vision and your innovation to convince the decision makers of the future. If you land up being an entrepreneur, then don't be an entrepreneur in Santon, be an entrepreneur in Alex. But here's an interesting answer to your question. We could have built Sammy Marks in Hatfield, right over here. But we chose to build it in Sammy Marks. For those of you that haven't gone to Sammy Marks, it's not quite like Alex, but it's not Hatfield. Now we need to understand that this country comes from segregation. This country comes from apartheid. This country comes from people that live here and work here. And so I didn't want to talk too much about branding, but I want to talk about the authenticity of your brand. Because can you imagine a person that lives in Sammy Marks but works in Hatfield? And when they live in Sammy Marks, they take their young kid to Sammy Marks McDonald's, inferior. All right, but when they go to Hatfield, they see this prestigious, beautiful Hatfield. So I'm sending a slightly different message, and I'm maybe not answering your question. All right, we need to understand over here that for us as a brand, I'm not talking engineering now. I've got my branding hat and my customer hat on. We need to be authentic, whether we are in Soweto, whether we are on the flats of Cape Town, whether we're in Sammy Marks, whether we're in Hatfield, Brooklyn, or Sandton. We represent the same.
Then I've got a second part to the question. Then again, as students, what are some of the leadership characteristics we can then start developing now to essentially get to these larger leadership roles in the future, or to kind of gear ourselves up for that?
Big dreams, small steps. This is the problem with young people. I spend a lot of my time with young men now. All right, not you because you're a young guy, and young women are there at the same time. But I feel, and I spend a lot of time with that sort of 16 to 30-year-old guys, especially the young men. And let's not make it a man thing. Let's say young men and young women. That factor of 10 and 5 is a factor of 2 for young people. It's moving so quick, and I can see it in my children as well. But you've got to be able to plug that big dream out. And maybe I can't get you to think 20 years, but plug that big dream out 10 years. Think about the pyramids that I mentioned. If you don't build your base, you ain't going to get to any leadership role. All right. Many of the older people that have gone there have taken a 20. Look at me, 27 years in McDonald's to be the CEO of McDonald's. It's taken me a while. So keep those big dreams going. I want you to think big, but understand that this year is one small step, next year is one small step, and then reset those big dreams. I want you to have huge dreams, but I want you to be realistic with yourself. You're not going to get there straight away.
Quick questioners, please put their mics on. I assume the mics are working. Better for us to hear the question.
Okay. Mics are on if you want to ask another question. Hello.
Thank you very much. This is a really interesting and enlightening lecture. I want to ask a little bit more about it, and it goes back to the Alexander and the new and the existing and the inequities in the country. So you have installed this wonderful new technologies, touch screens, and we're moving to apps and going for the digital transformation. But we are also working in a country where we've got a large cash economy, where there's not people who are unbanked still, who may not have access to smartphones, who may not have knowledge to use it. And in some ways, these new digital technologies exclude them from going to a McDonald's. I'm the car guard who walks in there with his 100 rand and 5 rand coins. How does he now get a McDonald's burger? So how do you manage these tensions between serving the larger part of the population and still maintaining this growth towards new technologies and transforming the industry?
So you certainly, so we're talking here, for those that didn't answer the question, is that we want to unpack a little bit the haves and the have-nots and this Gini coefficient and how, as a brand, do you reach them? You can't reach everybody.
It's the digital transformation.
Okay. The digital. So you won't be able to reach everyone. Okay, but you've got to be able to try and reach as many. I'm saying if you Louis Vuitton and you are focused on just the top 1% of South Africa, then they've got a strategy. They're very, very happy. But if you really want to reach the full democracy of the business or as much as you can, I was trying to make a point, and I'm going to come to your digital point now. I was trying to make a point that you've got to think bigger. If we were just focused on Brooklyn, Hatfield, and Sandton, we would probably be 50 restaurants. So now we also can't be available to we deal with LSM living standard measures, 1 through 10. So Brooklyn is 10, all right, and then you've got rural people live off the land at 1. All right, Sammy Marks is probably more the 5s. They've still got a bit of disposable income. In the Maslow hierarchy that we study over here, it's not, I don't think anyone's put signs to it, but cell phones are right up there. So we're touching LSM's 6s and 7s. So we've got 60 million people in the country. I'm maybe deviating from your question. We know we can't cater to 1s, 2s, and 3s. We're not there yet. Okay? But out of the 60 million people in the country, we know that we can talk to 25 million people. And those 25 people are very, very digitized. Actually, in the world, I was attending a conversation with Starlink. Starlink are really trying to come into this country now. I was quizzing the country lead on Starlink. They reckon South Africa is going to be a top 10 market in the world for Starlink. That's how that we've transformed. We are so cellular savvy because we didn't have normal telephones. So everybody's got a cell phone. So we're happy that there's enough there.
Yeah, my question is to do with, it's based on the principle, the 80-20 principle, and would you speak a lot more on the economics of a single restaurant? What do you find being viable, or at which point do you think this restaurant is a success, or it's not? And also related to that question is also the comparison you gave for Alex and Sant, where Sant has got 2 and Alex has got 10. How do you manage risk? One of the things that you mentioned earlier about, you mentioned things like the 2019 riots and stuff like that. How do you manage risk and where is the cost benefit? How do you assess it?
So on the risk side, I'm not going to give an engineering answer because as engineers, we want to sort of de-risk things by building stuff. So I thought about this thing very, very carefully. There are 2 McDonald's and it feels very uncomfortable for me. There's one in Western Cape and there's one in Johannesburg that have burglar bars. So you walk up and you get to a cage before you have to order. And I feel like if you treat people like criminals, they'll act like criminals. So wherever possible, all right, we're trying to remove those barriers. I listen to my people very, very carefully on being able to do that, and you'll be surprised that the risks are not necessarily in the common places that we think there are risks. Downtown Hillbrow is much more risky for us than maybe Soweto. But I'm going to answer this one in a bit of a philosophical way because I think I can prove it. When I analysed the riots, and I analysed why were the 14, we had 100 restaurants hurt, but they got back up within 14 days. When I analysed why did those 14 restaurants get burnt, and again, we don't have much time to unpack it. There's a number of things that happened, but one of the most powerful messages that came through is when my franchisee or my restaurant manager had a powerful relationship with their community, within 2.5, 3 kilometers about it, they knew the church, they knew the police force, they knew their customers by name, they didn't get burnt down. And so sometimes you think that you can build barriers on barriers on barriers, and yes, we have different armed responses and various different things, but when you ingrain yourself in the local community, that the gardener is from the local community, that your plumber is from the local community, that you know the predicant from your local community, that you participate and you sponsor your schools in your local community protects you. So that's my big one there. On unit economics, look, in the old days, I've been there for a while, it was tough. I used to get out into sites, I used to kick the dirt. We'd only had 10, 15, 16 restaurants. How did you be able to figure them out? But the cool thing about it is that we were picking off the big cherries. Gateway, Pretoria, Zambezi, Pretoria. These were the big ones. They had to hunt for us. We knew that they had to hunt for us. Now it's a little bit more difficult to pick them, but because you've got 400 restaurants, all right, I wouldn't say the engineering, I was just going to say the engineering. The consumer and business insights now of 400 restaurants for me makes it very easy. We're getting it to plus or minus 5% on hitting unit economics now when we plonk a new restaurant. Because when we go to Tawandu and we put a restaurant into Tawandu, I look at that demographics. Cornelius tells me he's my consumer business insights in the real estate space. He tells me that restaurant in that trading area is similar to these 11 other restaurants in the country. And those 11 other restaurants in the country are doing these unit economics. And then we get the top line in, plonk it in, construction costs there, plus or minus 5%. So now it's becoming easier because we've got such legacy and such history. And we use the database of the existing restaurants to be able to come with the new restaurants. So I hope I sort of quasi-answered the two questions. So.
I know that you can apply your lessons to the public sector, specifically to local government and to service delivery, which is my big passion. And you were talking about your vision, for example, and your 10-year vision and all the rest of it. How does one reconcile the fact that there's elections every 5 years with a bit of engineering infrastructure which has to last 30, 40 years? There's a total mismatch when it comes to things like putting down budget for operations and maintenance. Now, what ideas, what thoughts, what contribution do you think could be made? I just want to get local government representatives who are thinking to the next election and to hell with what happens to the infrastructure after that. To my face, I've been told we don't care as long as we get re-elected. How does one reconcile your principles with that kind of attitude? Thank you.
Very hard question. I mean, it's. I guess I couldn't answer that properly because that's why I've chosen the hamburger place, and I can stay away from being a public servant. However, as a big leader, it comes as a responsibility, not as an accolade. I do sit on Business Unity South Africa. I do be able to contribute in some of these canvassing forums where we get like top CEOs, where we canvass ministers, and be able to try and make the right decisions where we can. A lot of our construction and development is almost privatization. We build our own network, we build our own roads, we lay the last 100 meters of electrical cable to get to our restaurants. So there's a lot of extra informal, not bad informal privatization and extra investment that we actually do. But I guess I'm scooting around your point and your frustration. For me to get a building plan approved, I was telling some of the senior guys upstairs there. So we build about 30 restaurants a year. Next year I'm going to slow it down a little bit. But out of the 20 restaurants next year, we already got 10 restaurants plan approvals. So you pay for the incompetencies. It's not great for me to order the kitchen equipment 18 months before I go under construction. The cash flow is sitting in the warehouse. I don't want it sitting in the warehouse. I want it coming in after 1 month, putting it in, installing, and letting the equipment work. So you unfortunately pay for these inefficiencies. Get your building plans approved 2 years before. Get your equipment in 13 months before. So I haven't answered your question. It's a hard question, but what I can say is I can't change the world. What we can say is we can change Sammy Marks, and we're currently changing Gateway, and we will change Zambezi, and we will change this, and little changes from all of us can change a town, and a changed town can change a province, and a changed province can change the country.
Good response, thank you.
First one over here, and then the lady at the top.
Thanks very much. McDonald's is a global business, so you've got a HQ in the US and you've got McDonald's all over the world. I was wondering what the relationship is between the HQ in the US and the local McDonald's, and then also what lessons do you learn from other countries in terms of how you operate here?
So we are a master franchise. We own the operating entity to run this business. We don't own the brand. We are given a 20-year license to run this brand. We have sub-franchisees underneath us. The master franchise, I use this opportunity, used to be the president, President Ramaphosa. He was my boss for 3 years. And then when he moved into the ANC, then he sold his business, out. There's a crowd, international crowd in Abu Dhabi that own about 5 different McDonald's countries. That are the main shareholders. So I run their operating business, and we run this business operating. We got the license, and yes, Chicago, owns the brand, and we call it freedom within a framework. The yellow arches, worldwide French fries, this is the Big Mac, these are the manuals, these are the training manuals. From a human capital, from an engineering, from the local modifications and scaling and stuff, local leadership does that. 100% locally managed and run here now in South Africa. So that's how the structure is. We have sub-franchisees, we have a master franchise, and the international guys, very instrumental in our lives, make sure that we cooking French fries, Big Macs, and representing the brand accordingly. Sorry.
Okay, so
I don't think those back ones work, you'll have to scream.
okay, so now that you said that maybe my question is moot, but I have a food question.
Yes.
So I was wondering whether the shift towards plant-based eating was on your radar at all. Does it feature, or is it a non-issue for you?
It's not a non-issue, especially with the Gen Zs and the younger people. We talk about purpose, especially that younger generation, sort of up to like 32, 35. They're much more purposeful, and so if you're thinking vegetarian, if you're thinking plant-based food, it's still 1 or 2% of our business. It's not really economically viable for us to be able to do it, but it creates a purpose of option. It creates this view of a progressive thinking company, and so we are going that route. But like we put salads in McDonald's, but we must be authentic. I've got to stand up in front of you and say we sell Big Macs, French fries, strawberry shakes, and I'm proud of that, okay? If you want a salad, I guess we're probably not the right place for you to be able to do that, versus me standing up over here and saying to you, I'm not saying we're unhealthy, because we can get involved in health, protein, salad, all of those type of things. Really happy to have that conversation. So we are going there, but it's not a huge focus. We're a hamburger business, beef, chicken. That's what we want to focus on, hence my presentation. Focus. 1 or 2 extra questions, the gentleman in the back.
So McDonald's owns the most amount of real estate in the fast food industry globally. So with the whole green movement and sustainable development, firstly, how is McDonald's looking at reducing their carbon consumption? And my follow-up with that is, with the 10-3-1-Q model, could South Africa see a net zero McDonald's franchise?
Net zero by 2030 is our goal. So you've got to lead. A big brand, the tallest tree catches the wind. So our goal is to get to net zero by 2030. It's going to start with not necessarily how you exit your waste. It's what you're sourcing. So we started with packaging. We started with the electrical consumption. We started with all our kitchen equipment on getting our down. We're now thinking of wooden construction. We're going to be opening up our first wooden-built McDonald's building. We're thinking that's really thinking. We've got 8 big 100-kilowatt solar McDonald's. I know it's small in you guys, but 100 kilowatts big for us with a mixture of energy. So we're going with waste sorting. You've got to go that way. It's not an if, it's a when, and a responsible brand needs to lead the way. And if you're a big brand, you got to be out there. You got to be out there doing it. It comes with the territory. Sorry.
You spoke about how there are 10 things that have worked at McDonald's and like 10,000 things that haven't worked. I just wanted to ask, how do you make the decision between an idea on the table and taking it with the ready, fire, aim approach, or more the ready, aim, fire approach?
Yeah, it's two ways really. I mean, we as engineers, we study engineering, but there's a whole field of people more into stats, sort of nutty professors in consumer and business insights, like forecasting and the actuaries and all of that. They can run these scenarios. They drive me crazy. And our lead guy is a guy by the name of Tiniko, and he comes with these scenarios, option 1, option 2, option 3. I get it, we follow that route. 9 out of 10 times he gets quite close with his team. It's a big team, but sometimes the best way is just to try it. Because if you're going to fail in 10 stores. Don't fail in the 100 stores. So here in Pretoria, we have a test that's happening in Pretoria. You probably don't even know it, but there's a value test that we're testing at a very low entry level, because we feel that maybe we've gone a little bit too pricey and we want to sort of scale it down. Again, to that question about the haves and the have-nots and whatever, when we start seeing that our business is moving more into LSM 7, 8s and 9s, and we're not catering for the 5s, maybe we've gone a little bit there. So there's a test in 50 restaurants here in Tshwane, and it's working fantastically. But I didn't want to take the chance in 400 restaurants. So we tested it here in 40 restaurants, and I don't want to give my secrets away, but big things coming in January because of that test. So test in small areas, it really, really works. Okay? And rather just test to fail. It's really good. If I really want to try a smaller market, I go to Rustenburg, I go to Eastern Cape, I go to George, I've got 2-3 stores in George and Mossel Bay, just testing 4 restaurants there. It's a little mini market, it's got its own radio station, it's got its own TV, it's got its own newspaper. I like cool markets to test stuff on. 2 or 3 more questions and then I'll give it back to Doc. Go for it.
Much more light-hearted question.
Yes.
But, how much or how often do you eat McDonald's?
So I'm eating probably 5 times a week, McDonald's. And again, I don't want to make it too much about the food here, but for me, health is important. I'm an engineer. I needed to understand health in what we do. I've spoken to many groups of medical doctors. Sometimes it's about knowing what you eat. And I think the best thing that we can tell our customers, all right, is when you eat a Big Mac, do you know how many calories you're eating? So that's an important thing for me. So I eat a lot of breakfast, I drink a lot of their coffee, I'm a big McCafe user, I eat the stuff, but yet again, I know my lifestyle can cater for it. The lady there, and then I think the last question at the back over there.
My question is, besides relying on reality, what are your competitive intelligence strategies as McDonald's, given that, as mentioned, for instance, Alex, there's young businesses starting, small businesses starting rather, and they more or less produce something that the community likes more than McDonald's? I wouldn't say what.
How do I keep up with the competition? It's how does the competition keep up with us? So if you have that attitude that the competition needs to catch up, I made a little statement, you're going to get innovators and you're going to get quick followers. All right. So again, in a humble way, not in an arrogant way, we like to sort of innovate and like to focus. We could have bought a coffee shop. We made our own coffee shop. We could have bought a breakfast shop. We made our own breakfast shop. We could have tried to do certain things. So we haven't bought a pizza shop yet. That's why we don't sell pizza and we don't sell pies. So we want to know our knitting and we want to do our things. However, often France, Germany, Australia, some of the Western countries are ahead of us. And so our competition can, if they want to know what we're doing, you can just go to France because we're going to get there in 18 months' time. So secrets are out. Then it comes down to execution. Everybody can have, because it's not always about innovation. It's about execution. And this is what I say to my team, and to answer the question about the business model in the back over there, is that we're not here to come up with the greatest ideas. We've bought the brand from America, and we expect them to tell us what to do. We're not here to make the horse, we're here to ride the horse. And so we need to be strategic executors, focus on executing, best service, best day, fast, fresh. And that's where we need to be. However, with that said, the competition landscape is changing quite nicely. It's interesting, it's highly competitive. We do watch our competition, but I'll make this point, is what's interesting and what's biting at our heels, and what's hurting us a little bit as a business, but what is exciting me as a local South African is the local South African little businesses, not necessarily the big KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, warfare. That's going to continue to happen with the big cannons. It's the smaller guys that are coming up, the local entrepreneurs. Back to that youthful point that we made over here. This country, unfortunately, is full of corporations, not full of entrepreneurs. I was talking to some entrepreneurs the other day. We want to really, really change the question, and maybe we can't change the government. We really want to change this economy. We need more entrepreneurs. Restaurant entrepreneurs, even better. Last question at the top. There was one question.
Hi. My question is, what skills or experiences would you recommend for engineering students to have if they want to work for a company or want to be in a leadership position in a company like McDonald's? And also, do you mind being my mentor?
Look, I mean, we're pretty dangerous as engineers on finance. So typically I say if you're not studying finance, you've got to study finance after your degree. It's vital. If you don't control the money, you're going to probably struggle. So finance is really, really important, but because we're quite dangerous and we understand numbers and we understand maths and we can go plus and minus and do fancy spreadsheets, typically engineers are a little bit sharper on that. Sometimes as engineers we're a little conservative and we sort of, we remain and the rest of the world is scattered because we're still counting and double checking. But finance definitely, one of them. And then the one that you can't really learn more, but if you really want to scale, if you really want to lead, as a professional doctor or nurse or engineer, you're only selling hours. So you want to scale beyond that, you've got to be able to scale through people. And that's going to unfortunately come with time. I had a young girl, like three years old in Joburg. She climbed up a play place. There was a big kid in the play place that cut a hole with a knife in the play place. And the little 3-year-old little girl went up the play place and she fell down on her head. It wasn't fatal, but it was horrific. And can you imagine dealing with that mom, with that kid that's sitting in ICU? And I guess what I'm sending that message to you is there's no school that can teach me how to handle that mom. And there's no skill, there's only experience that can do that. And since then I've handled much tougher customer complaints. So just a little bit of patience. People and finance is my answer to you. And we can talk afterwards about the other point. All right, I think we're done, Doc. Is that right? Okay, thank you everybody, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm vertically challenged. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is TC Matikani. I'm the president of the Academy. As we come to the end of this exciting lecture, it is my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks. We appreciate and acknowledge all the stakeholders, especially Craig's family. It is an honor for you to be with us. Craig, your speech is very inspirational. And your style of leadership certainly resonates with me, and I'm sure with most of us. Your speech, there are 3 take-homes for me. The first one, you talk about leadership, and you say it's about keeping promises. And I hope all of us, we can learn that leadership is not difficult, but it's all about keeping promises. The second one, in one of your slides, you talked about your 24/7. That decision was not taken by you. That decision was not taken by management, but it was taken by your staff, by people. The third one, as a typical engineer, you were talking about innovation, but you said something so profound that the choices of innovation, it doesn't come from your ESCO, but it comes from 10,000 ideas. Indeed, your leadership style, it's all about people leading your business. Colleagues, as we come to the end, both the University of Pretoria and the Academy, we always ensure that we obtain an eminent speaker to deliver the Hendrick van der Bijl lecture, and indeed, in 2024, we have exceeded our expectations. I sincerely hope all of us who have taken this message to heart and we can implement the advices and change the society and the world. And in your speech, you said something so profound again. Let me say it again, paraphrase it. You said it's little moves that makes the biggest change. It is my honor to call you up front to receive a token of appreciation from both the university and the academy.
It's supposed to be little.
Felix always got it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that we came to the end of this year's Hendrick van der Bijl Memorial Lecture. I hope and trust that you enjoyed it, that you've got some, if I say food for thought, it's probably hamburger for thought for the next few days. But I really hope that you enjoyed it, and please join us outside and let's enjoy also the company of other people, because I think that was the one message that came through, that in the end, the engineering and the maths and stuff are important, but the humanness is probably more important than all of that. Please enjoy, and when you drive back home, have a safe evening. Bye-bye.